Okay, so welcome everybody to our Journeys Map open house. I'm Tracy Nguyen Minh, and I am the founder of Vietnamese Boat People nonprofit. I have with me Richard Lung, who is one of our board members on Vietnamese Boat People nonprofit. And the two of us are so excited to have you join us on the soft launch of version 2.0 of the Vietnamese Boat People Journeys Map. If you're not familiar with our nonprofit, which I think most of you on the call are, but I'll go ahead and just give a quick overview. We are mostly a volunteer-led organization. We're almost 5 years old, coming this October. And we started out as a podcast with the mission to record and curate a set of stories of the Vietnamese diaspora community and put them on an accessible digital platforms such as a podcast. Since then, we have grown organically, and our nonprofit offers a number of different programs for the public that empowers individuals and families to preserve their own stories and to share them as part of the overall collective. We do that through community events, through our annual Meet Story Slam. We have a community blog. We also have a conversation kit that was launched last year to help encourage intergenerational dialogue within neighborhoods, families, friends, and communities. And the Journeys Map is a very special project that Richard and I started actually over 3 years ago. And in 2021, we launched a beta version, which was very simple. We were trying to launch a POV, which is just a proof of concept, a POC. And since then, we got so much feedback. And thank you to the New Jersey Council of Humanities. They funded us for a version 2.0, which allowed us to develop technical features that really makes the Journeys map a little bit more dynamic, but also create a space where it makes it easier for people to not only explore stories, but to share their own stories. So today's open house, what we'd like to do is show you the new website and also, have time to let you share any, ideas that you may have, any feedback that you have, any questions, and to get your input on where we can further improve this Journeys map, but also how we can engage the community to contribute to the Journeys map. We will be doing a presentation. However, we called it an open house because we want this to be very interactive. So if you have any questions at any time, just go off mute and feel free to ask us. This is not formal by any means. If you want to save your questions till the end, we can do that as well. But please, it's a small group this evening or this morning to some of us. And I want to make sure that you're comfortable and that you get your questions answered, but you also have an opportunity to share your own experiences with us on the call. I'm going to take a moment to actually let Richard personally introduce himself.
Sure. Thanks so much, Tracy. As she mentioned, my name is Richard. I do serve on the board of VBP. My parents are boat people, and it's really been a privilege to work on this project to not only honor them, but to help families and individuals explore and share their stories and histories. What really excited me about this project is not just that you can explore the stories on the site, but that we're also helping people kind of like have the tools to navigate conversations and inspire them to have the conversations to begin with. With my own personal experience, it took really my whole adult life to really piece together my family stories. So to understand that other people are going through that experience too, and to see the end result of their exploration and dialogue with their families is really inspiring and meaningful to me. and I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about the new and improved Journeys Map platform. So, if it's okay with you, Tracy, maybe I'll just go ahead and share my screen and we can start navigating through it together.
That sounds great. Thank you, Richard.
All right. So, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. All right. So one really great thing is this video that you just saw playing in the background. The photos that you see scrolling across your screen were actually submitted to the Journeys Map platform from some of our submissions thus far. And if I keep navigating down this way, you'll see our vision statement here. Again, really the idea behind the Journeys Map is to provide the space for families and people to share stories and histories by contributing photos, artifacts, other memories. And we're really hoping to encourage the intergenerational dialogue and really build more awareness around the lived experiences of our communities.
Yeah, and if I
So,
can add to that,
yeah,
Richard, I don't know how many people on the call follow. Well, first of all, I don't know how many people on the call are, part of family members that came to either Canada or the US as a refugee or an immigrant. But, these stories oftentimes live in our families. And with younger generations, they're not always shared, like Richard mentioned. And what I have found through my journey of starting Vietnamese Boat People is that there are Facebook groups out there that are focused on Vietnamese refugees or the refugee camps that people ended up staying at temporarily. There are actually a few of them, and people were sharing photographs and stories on these Facebook groups. But what was missing was a space where they were all collected together in one area that they can be searchable again and again. That they provide not only a space for our Vietnamese community to connect with each other through these shared experiences, but our stories are important for the broader community, right? There should be a space where people that are outside of the Vietnamese community to be able to understand our backgrounds and experiences by going to a collective like this and exploring some of our stories. And so that is just an example of, some of the inspiration behind creating a collective like this is because people are sharing bits and pieces of their stories in different types of venues and formats. And what we hope to do is bring everyone's stories together in one place that can be digitally archived, searchable, that can provide visuals, but also, as you'll see when Richard goes through this, that can be mapped on a world map because our Vietnamese diaspora stories are everywhere. Thank you, Richard, for letting me insert that.
oh, no problem. And that is a really great context because really that point you made is such a big part of the vision behind what we're doing to make this accessible and to inspire people to be sharing and talking to each other. Whether they're Vietnamese or not, this is a great resource. So I'm going to start off by just talking about some of the different ways that you can explore the submissions to the Journeys Map. So in the previous version of or the beta version of the Journeys Map, there was a map that you could look through with different location points. And what we wanted to do was kind of give different types of interactive components for users to explore the stories that are in the Journeys Map platform. So the first one I'm going to show is the gallery view. And inside of the gallery view, you will see the photos and titles and storytellers. You can click through here to read the individual stories that are submitted. And a feature that we added to the new Journeys map is having this filter function. So you can either search by a storyteller's name, resettlement country, refugee camp, departure date. So I'm going to do a really quick filtering to show how this works. So I'm just going to scroll down here and pick this location in Indonesia and apply the filter. And as you can see, it pulled up 5 different stories that have that refugee camp as part of the storyteller's journey. I'll click into one just so we can kind of see how the stories look here. So the first thing you'll see when you click on anyone's story is the primary photo or media that was uploaded by the user or the storyteller and the caption they provided. So here you can see this is Philip with his parents and 2 sisters. This is an old family photo. And when you scroll down, the first thing you get to see is this card, which is really a high level summary of the story that was submitted with different data points that a user submitted with their story. So you get to see where this person is based now, that the story is about them, where they grew up, where they departed from, what year they departed from, stops along the way, and then where they ended up resettling and the resettlement year. And if you keep scrolling down, you get to the full story. In this case, this story was submitted as a transcript of an oral history interview. So here you can see there was somebody interviewing Philip, and you get the whole transcript of the interview here. The stories take form in different ways. Sometimes they're narratives, sometimes they will show up as an interview transcript like this. And other times you will get a description of a video with a link to a video. So there are many different ways that you can be submitting your story. This is just one of them. And as we continue on, we'll see other ways that people have submitted their stories. I'm going to navigate back here. That's the gallery view. The next way I wanted to quickly go over that we can explore stories is by looking at collections. So these featured collections are, as you can read here, special projects that have been executed with the support of our programs. So in the future, this will be a place that oral histories collections are housed, or community projects. There is a link to contact us to learn more, where we can help provide resources, brainstorming, and other support for people who are looking to capture stories through a local initiative in their community.
And Richard, this is actually a great example to just to go back to the first story that you showed us. If you scroll down, that story that Richard had pulled up was part of this entire project called From Vietnam to Central Valley, which is an area based in California. And so Alexa Tran was a senior in high school. She had reached out to our organization and said that she wanted to collect oral histories in her county as part of a project that she would like to deliver for the Girl Scouts USA. So if you click on view her stories, our Vietnamese Boat People team, what we did was we provided her oral history templates and guidance. And we also helped her record the stories and create transcripts. And then we guided her to upload all the interviews that she collected. So this entire collection is an example of a project that we helped supported for someone who had reached out to us and said they wanted to do this initiative. So Alexa ended up interviewing 10 Vietnamese refugee families in her California area. And you'll see all the stories are uploaded here with photographs. We helped her put the interviews into transcripts. And as a result, Alexa received, and she's a senior in high school, now a freshman in college, by the way. So this was done just last spring. But she received a $10,000 scholarship from Girl Scouts as a result of this project. So I'm glad, actually, Richard, that you kind of started off with this, because this is a great example of, the Journeys map is designed to have individuals and families input stories themselves. But if you are part of a community, an organization of some sort, and you would like to create a project or initiative to do this, we are here to help as much as we can. And by doing that, we can help profile the stories that you collect through a collection such as this.
Absolutely. And I think it's so meaningful when people are able to go into their communities and collect stories the way that Alexa did. And this is a really great example of using VBP as a resource and the things that we offer as resources, but then also like the initiative and creativity and need for community connection to be able to really pull this off in a big way. So very deservingly so, Alexa was awarded a scholarship for this project, which if you have a chance, I certainly recommend for anyone watching this to go in and read all of the stories that Alexa was able to gather in her community. Again, when you are in the collections part of the Journeys map platform, you can click through to curated collections like Alexa's. And from there, you can click into the individual stories like Philip's that we looked at earlier in the meeting. So I'm going to navigate back now. And as you can see, there are some other collections here too. This is the Story Slam that Tracy had mentioned before, which is our signature annual event. So the stories from the Story Slam can be found here too. And as well as podcast episodes. And how they align in the map can also be found here as a collection. All right, and the final way that we can navigate the stories is through the map itself. So if you keep scrolling down on this page, you'll actually come to the map here that have data points that were populated from the stories that were submitted. Above the map are different ways that you can filter location. So if you're just wanting to look at refugee camps, you could click here, and the map will update to just show where there are points that correspond to the refugee camp stories that were submitted. resettlement countries, departure cities.
You'll have to go west for the resettlement countries because
Right.
what it'll show is stories of where they resettled in the US. Right
Sure. So
now,
here we go.
yes, sorry, East. Right now,
Or either way.
the majority of our stories are from people that resettled in the United States. We do have a few in Canada, and we also have a few in Europe. But what we're hoping to do, and I see we have actually one in Australia down there. What we're hoping to do is that this becomes a global collective, so that people from anywhere in the world that are part of this Vietnamese diaspora community, they can submit their stories.
Right. Let's see. Okay. So while Tracy was speaking, I removed the filter. So that's an easy way to kind of like get back to the base view that we started with. So for example, after you filter something, if you decide I really want to look at more than just the resettlement countries, I'd like to go back to seeing the map as it originally was. You can click remove filter to restore the map to how it was initially. And this map operates just like you would with Google Maps or Apple Maps. You can zoom in here and you'll see different points, and these different points correspond with different stories. So if I click on one of them, you'll see a really quick preview with the author and information about their departure and the point. But really the point, not about their departure. This point happens to be about this person's departure. So it will show that they departed from this location. If we were to click on a point that was a resettlement camp or a refugee camp or resettlement point, it would say, whoops, I mean to click through to that. It would say camp or resettlement site. So I'm going to zoom back in here. You can see when you're clicking through, it will populate these previews. And then from there, you can click into individual stories. So I'm going to pick Amy's story here. Amy's one of our fellow board members. And when you click through, it brings us to the individual story page. Again, the photo was updated by Amy. This high-level overview of the different data points that were input, and then below the story. With that, I think that's most of the basic navigation. From there, it's really just up to you to figure out where you want to be looking and what stories you want to be exploring. And the last big piece of the website here is sharing your story. So I'm going to click through here and I'm going to give a really quick run through of how to submit a story on our platform. So when you come to the story submission page, you'll get an overview here. There's also a feature to translate into Vietnamese here as well. And if you're coming into the site for the first time, you'll have to read the terms and conditions, agree to them, and create a new user. Once you have created your user account in the Journeys Map platform, you'll be able to log back in to update a draft of your story. If you've already submitted a story and you want to update it, you can also click through here to update a submitted story. So what I'm going to do, I have a story that is already submitted inside of the platform, but I'm going to go back into it now to show everyone what it looks like with the mechanics of submitting a story. So if I click here to update a submitted story, as you can see, I'm logged in. So on this page, you will see either drafts or submissions that you've already input into the journeys map. So here's my story. I'm going to select it to show the form. So when you first come to the story submission page, some basic information about the story will be input here. So your name, the name of the storyteller to be displayed with the story. The differentiation made here is if, for example, I just wanted my first name to be shown, or I wanted to go by an alias that is going to be displayed on the website. I have the choice to do that here or anonymize myself here. Where do I currently reside? Oops. I can add that information in. And again, this is linked to like a mapping platform, so it will start to populate information. And here's the title of my story. Who is the story about, and what is their relationship to you? So the reason why these questions are set up this way is oftentimes someone will be telling a story about a relative who is not actually the person submitting the story. So this is a way for us to differentiate between who's submitting the story and who the storyteller is, and who the story could be about. So sometimes this is about a parent. Sometimes this is about some other relative, maybe a deceased relative. So this is your chance to kind of help populate that type of data so that we understand who the story is about. The story is about me and my family, in particular, my parents. And in the story, I explored the journey from my parents departing Vietnam, and their wedding in Virginia, and traced it to my wedding. So what we want users to do here on this first page is briefly summarize the story they're going to tell in detail later on in the form. So, and at any point while you're working on this, you can save these drafts by clicking this button, and then move on to the next parts of the form. So here you'll see we tried to break it down in different into different pieces so that you could kind of navigate back easily to update different parts depending on what part of the process you're in as far as collecting the information or telling the story. So this first one is general, the next one is childhood. So here I entered where my parents were from. You also have an opportunity here to tell us more about the person's childhood, who the story is being told about, what their community was like. This next section is around the departure, both internal migration and external migration. So internal migration being, were there stops made within Vietnam prior to leaving? And if so, how did that migration happen? And then external migration is about where from Vietnam did the person depart from. And here you'll see there's other information if you have it, such as the method of transportation. So my parents were by boat, the name of the transportation, if that is available. If the story involved a rescue ship, the name of the rescue ship can be put here. And then again, along the way, there are really kind of like these dialogue and kind of like narrative idea starters with questions that we pose that can really help someone get to the point that they're really putting together a full story. These are optional to fill out, but they really do help guide someone in being able to tell the story. So here, for example, there's questions about how someone felt when they left, how the trip was planned, how many days it took, what other events happened, and moments in the journey that changed the way they see the world. If we keep going here, here's camps. So here's where you can input those points in the map that we saw earlier, and then those points that summary cards with folks' individual stories. So here is where you can enter that information. If there's more than one camp, you can click through and add more. So actually, so I can put it in, although I don't know the month, I do know the years. So I can do that now to update this. On the way, click through again. Here's resettlement. Where did the person in the story finally resettle? You can enter that information here. Again, another kind of like another prompt to make you think about the story that you're telling is here. And then these last two sections, here's the story where you can write out the narrative. If it's part of a project like for example, the stories that were submitted as part of Alexa's collection, you can add in the name of that project here. And then of course, there's ways that we can stay in touch with you here. In addition to finding out if you're interested in either publishing the story you submitted to our blog, if you want it to be considered for the podcast, if you want to submit this as part of the annual story slam, you can check these, whatever boxes are relevant to your submission there. And then finally, here's the space to upload files. So here we ask folks to upload photos that either have significance to you or relevance to the story, and some ideas about what those could be. So whether those are items that were brought over during the journey, handed down, or other things that kind of remind you of your family story. Those can be uploaded here. A description for the cover image is also placed here. And if you have audio or video, we have sections down here that you can post a link to where that audio and video lives. And then the final step is reviewing and submitting. So I'm going to click review here. What the review function does is just kind of let you see everything that you've input across those different parts of the form. And when you scroll down to the bottom and everything looks good, oh, actually, you have to go back to the form. Sorry. You go back to the form after reviewing, and then you can submit down here at the bottom. Or have to go, sorry.
Yeah,
the
reason why you can't submit, Richard, is because some of the required fields have to be completed before you submit. So where they're red, those are required fields on that first tab. And if those were completed, then you can submit. Everything else on the other tabs are optional, as Richard mentioned, because we know that sometimes people don't have exact dates or locations about their family stories or their own stories, and that's okay. So the first tab that Richard is on, that is the only tab where everything is required, including your email address, which will not be made public, but it's a way for us to contact you if we have any questions on your submission. The other thing that is required is we need to associate the story with at least one location. And that location is the location of the person who is submitting the story. So for example, if I was submitting the story, I would put Montclair, New Jersey. And if I didn't have any other locations in my story, at least my story would appear in New Jersey on the USA country of that journeys map. So that first tab has the required fields. Everything else is optional. And so once that first tab, all the required fields are completed, you'll be able to submit. This review portion is just to let you review it and to print a copy if you like. And also, sorry, Richard, I don't know if you covered this because I was trying to answer some of the questions in the chat. But just one quick thing in case people didn't see the question in the chat. Somebody had asked whether or not we translate the story from Vietnamese to English. And in this current version, we cannot do that. But what we have done is, based on our beta testing, we know that some people are more comfortable and fluent in writing in Vietnamese. And so for that reason, we created the submission form in Vietnamese, and it allows you to share your story in Vietnamese. If you do that, when you submit it, the story will appear in Vietnamese. So right now, it doesn't translate into English. That is something that we are looking for a phase 3 to be able to translate stories back and forth, not just in Vietnamese and English, but maybe in a couple of other different languages as we hope this becomes a global map. And then the important part about creating an account is that what we learned during beta testing is that a lot of people said when they sit down and do a submission, they realize that they don't have all the answers. We encourage you to put in dates and locations if you have it, because it just will allow the story to be more searchable, and it allows us to connect and cluster like stories in the future, the more data points we have. So the reason why we have created the submission form so that you have an account is so that you can always go back in once you have collected that information. Or maybe you want to keep working on your short story before you submit it, or maybe you need more time to collect photos. And so as Richard showed, once you submit the story and you have an account, you'll also be able to go back and edit that story. So maybe you found out more information about your family. You can go back in with your account and edit that story. So that's an important piece of why we wanted users to be able to create an account on the Journeys map that they can always go back to. Richard,
Exactly. Yeah, it's a process. So
yeah, thank you so much,
that.
Richard. I know we're over time, so I just want to be respectful. Would you mind if I just did a quick overview of the toolkit and then just let others ask a little bit more questions if they have any?
Sure.
So when we did beta testing, we did it last year, and we also did it earlier this year before we launched the second version. I think one of our biggest lessons learned was that the majority of people that want to share their stories, it's not always their own story, especially because, if I was part of the refugee, the first wave, in the early 80s. And so I was so young. I was 3 years old and I experienced it, but obviously I was too young to remember it. And so what we are seeing from a lot of the users is that it's a younger generation that wants to share their stories, but it's not necessarily things that they remember, or it's a story that their parents went through, not themselves. And so it's a process for them to uncover some of these journeys and stories and artifacts from their families, and that it's not something that you could just sit down and type. So for those reasons, we created a toolkit, because we know that people wanted a little bit of help in how to get started. If you scroll down, Richard, there's some links that will help you. There's a get started guide. We have a frequently asked question, a list of about 15 questions. You don't have to click on them, Richard. I'll just go through quickly. We have a testimonial video from some of our beta users that participated. We also have a conversation kit. This is something that we created, as I mentioned earlier, where it's a deck of conversational cards in both English and in Vietnamese that you can purchase. 100% of the proceeds go back to our nonprofit. For everybody who attended today's event, we'll be emailing you to give you a 20% off discount code to use if you wanted to purchase the conversation kit. But we have found that a lot of people were either language barrier or just, open communications is not something that comes naturally for them or their relationship with their family members. And so the conversation kit was created. Actually, Richard, if you wouldn't mind clicking on that, it's created to just help people ask questions, but in a way that doesn't feel so intimidating. So you'll see it's a deck of cards. We have 48 questions in both English and Vietnamese. And the idea is sit around with your family members, pick a card, ask them the question, and hopefully it'll start a dialogue to learn more about your family's history. So this is a great tool to use if you wanted to kind of learn a little bit more, and then based on the answers to the questions, maybe pick a part of your family story that you would like to submit as part of the Journeys map. So I'll be sending out a discount code for the conversation kit if anybody wants to purchase it. If you go back to the toolkit, Richard, we have a couple of other what I call micro videos that some of our subject matter experts within our community created. So Alison Hong Wing is an author, and she published her own memoir last year called Salted Plums. It was published through Kahana Press, and she put together these micro videos that helps guide people through journal writing, personal essays, creating short stories out of pictures. And so you can use some of these resources to give you ideas of how you can think about submitting your own story. We also have another video. Lynn is one of our Story Slam alums. She shares a short experience where she had a phone conversation on FaceTime with her mom to ask her some questions. And then she took that phone conversation and created a short story about how her mom came to the US and how her mom found her American grandfather. And then below we have Professor Marguerite Nguyen. She put together tutorials, and this is really, really important for us. I think many of you on the call are very familiar with the recent anti-Asian hate that we've been experiencing across the United States, Canada, and other countries, and why the movement to share our stories as Asians is so important. And so Professor Marguerite talks about, Asian American stories in general, but also the evolution of Viet narratives, all the way to what was shared in the early 80s to now. We have a lot of Viet American diaspora authors like Viet Thanh Nguyen, Ocean Vuong, and what that has looked like. And then her last tutorial is why your story, why our stories matter. And so what we hope to do with the Journeys map is to encourage you that your story is important, that your story collectively as a community, it helps us create a more comprehensive picture of how diverse our experiences are, and shares with people what our community has evolved to and some of our culture and our history and our past. But these are just some resources for you. We're going to continue adding them. Later this winter, we'll be launching a series of virtual meetups where we'll have special guests to come in, and they can share their process for documenting their stories. And hopefully it will inspire you to do the same, but also give you an opportunity to ask questions. I think I answered most of the questions in the chat, but I just wanted to, before we open up to any other Q&As we might have, I just wanted to reiterate some of Richard's points earlier, is that there is no one way to share your story on this Journeys map. It's really a space where we let you share it the way you want to share it. So if you just want to post up photos and put in dates and locations and a summary of how your family came to America or to Canada, you can do that. If you wanted to interview a family member and create record the audio and upload it, you can do that, or record a video and upload it, and you can do that. If you wanted to do a creative short story about your experiences or perspectives, you can do that. It's really whatever format that you are most comfortable in. And our job as an organization is to create a space and to provide tools, resources, and encouragement for you to do so.